So I'm required to round off to the nearest two significant figures. So what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to count the first two significant figures. And significant figures are counted starting from the left, going towards the right. So I'm going to first look for the first two significant figures in this case. When you look at this number, it has three significant figures because all these are non-zero, basing on condition 1, which we looked at previously. But out of the three, we are required to round off these three significant figures to only 2. So what I'm going to do in this case, I count my first two significant figures. Of course, I said starting from the left towards the right. So 2 is my first, 5 is my second. So these are my first two significant figures. After I've identified the second significant figure, I look at the number which is after that second significant figure. If that number is less than 5, then I add a 0 to this number which I've located. If that number is greater or equal to 5, I add a 1 to the number which I've located in the second significant number. So in this case, my second significant number is 5 and the number after it is 6. Now since 6 is greater than 5, I'm going to add a 1 to the 5. Just like we did when we were rounding off to a particular number of decimal points or decimal places. So because I have a 6 here, I'm going to add a 1 to the 5. So I'm going to have 2, 5, 6. I add 1 to the 5, give me 6. I maintain the 2. Then I replace the 6 with a 0. Now, is this 0 a significant number? The answer is no. Because when you look at the fifth condition which we looked at, we say that all trailing zeros in a number which has no decimal places, those zeros are said to be insignificant. So meaning this 0 is not significant. So when I look at the number of significant figures in this case, I only have 2 and 6. And those are my two significant figures. So I've rounded off 256 to the nearest two significant figures. And proceed to Roman 2. I have 0.2572. And I'm required to round off to the nearest two significant figures. Now, like I said in the first example, first identify the first two significant figures. Starting from the left, is this 0 a significant figure? The answer is no. Because already we say that all leading zeros in a number are said to be not significant. So this 0 is not significant. I proceed to 2. Of course, 2 is a significant number. 5 is also a significant figure. So I've already gotten my two significant figures as 2 and 5. After that, I look 2 and 5. After I'm done with that, I look at the number which is after the 5, and that number is 7. Now, since 7 is greater than 5, I'm going to add the 1 to the 5. So I'm going to have 0.2572. I add the 1 to the 5, the second significant figure. So I'm going to have 0.25. Now, what do I do to the 7 and the 2? Remember, we say, now, if I replace with 0 here, and I have 0.2500. When you look at condition 4 was telling us that all numbers, all zeros, in other words, all the trailing zeros in a decimal number are said to be significant. In other words, all the zeros that come at the end when I'm dealing with decimal numbers are said to be significant. So if I put a 0 here, and I also put another 0 here. These two zeros at the end, okay, if I do this, if I replace the 7 and the 2 with the zeros, now these two zeros at the end are going to be significant. Now that means in total I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 significant numbers. And yet the question requires us to find only two significant figures. So what do I do? After I've added the 1 to the 5, I get 6, sorry. It's supposed to be 6. So what I do to the 7 and the 2, I just discard them, or I do away with I do away with them. I do not replace them with the zeros, because the zeros in this case are going to be significant. Which is not the case here, because we say in condition 5 that when the trailing zeros, all the zeros at the end of a number which has no decimal point, those ones are considered to be not significant. So I'm not going to put the zeros, so my final answer is going to be 0.26. And these are my two significant figures. So you can look at maybe example number 3, which is 15,270. Okay, so we're going to round off to the nearest two significant figures still. So what do I do in this case? I count my first two significant figures. My first significant figure is 1, the second one is 5. So these are my two significant figures. After doing that, I look at the number after that. So my first two significant figures are 1 and 5. Then the number after 5 is 2. Now since 2 is less than 5, I'm going to add a 0 to the 5, which is the second significant figure. So I'm going to have this 270, and I add a 0 to the 5, ending up with this. Now what do I do to the other numbers after the 5? I replace them with zeros. So I'm going to replace 2 with a 0, replace 7 with a 0. Of course the 0 remains a 0. Now when you look at this case, the zeros here are not significant. And we looked at this from condition number 5. The zeros here are not significant, which is not the case here when we have a decimal point. But here, since we do not have any decimal point, the zeros here are considered to be not significant. So my final answer is going to be 15,000. So I've rounded off to two significant figures. I proceed to Roman numeral number 4. And I have 0.000425. And this one requires me to round off to the nearest 4 significant figures. No, to the nearest 1 significant figure. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to look for the first significant figure. When you look at all these zeros before, based on condition number, on number 3, all these zeros are not significant. So meaning my first significant number in this case is a 4. After locating my first significant number, I look at the number next to it, which in this case is a 2. Now since 2 is less than 5, that means I'm just going to add a 0 to the 4. In other words, I do not get any change. So I'm just going to add a 0 to the 4, and it will remain like that. Now, remember we said when we're dealing with decimal points or decimal numbers, we do not replace these other numbers after the 4 with zeros. Because if we replace with zeros, the zeros after the 4 are going to be significant. And therefore we shall have increased the number of significant numbers, of significant figures in that particular number. But in this case we want only one significant figure, which is 4. I've looked at the number next to it 2, which is less than 5, so I add 0 here, it remains as 4. So meaning my final answer is going to be 0.0004 as my final answer. I do not make these ones to be 0, because when I add 0, 0 here, those two zeros, the trailing zeros, based on condition number 3, are going to be significant. We proceed to Roman numeral number 5. 875021. And we are required to round off to the nearest 4 significant figures. So, like we did previously, I count my first 4 significant figures. This is my first one, second one, third. Now, is this 0 a significant number? The answer is yes. Because the 0 is between 5 and 4. And 5 and 4, based on condition 1, 5 and 4 are non-zero, and therefore they are significant. So meaning this 0 is also significant. So when I'm counting my first 4 significant figures, the 0 is also a significant figure. I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these are my first 4 significant figures stopping at 0. After I've located the last significant figure, I look at the number which is next to it, and the number next to it in this case is a 4. Now since 4 is less than 5, like we're doing previously, I just add a 0 to the 0. Of course, 0 plus 0 remains 0. So I have 875, 0. Because I added 0 to this, 0 remains 0. Now, what do I do to the 4, 2, and the 1? Since this is a number without a decimal point, I replace these numbers with zeros. So I replace 4 with a 0, replace 2 with a 0, replace 1 with a 0. Now, all these zeros are not significant, based on condition number 3. So meaning the only significant numbers I have in this case are 8, 7, and 5. So I've rounded off this number to the nearest 3 significant figures. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening, and we shall proceed from there next time.